Hey there, Laker fans. Welcome to another episode of Lakers Extra Detailed. In this video, I wanted to kind of cover something that just happened right before the Celtics game. I mentioned it on the Celtics game, on the Celtics post game. Anthony Davis did an interview with Shams Charania, and they talked about just a few different things. But the main thing that came out from that was the AD making it known to the front office. And I think he further clarified it by saying that he had also told, um, he's been telling the front office this repeatedly, which the Lakers have tried to do, that he'd like to play the four more. And he thinks that the Lakers are at their best when he's playing the four. And there's a lot to that to understand why the Lakers haven't done as much, why he plays a five as much as he does. But I think there is an aspect to this in regards to the wear and tear on AD that sort of makes this a little bit more important of an issue because he is dealing with the plantar fasciitis in his foot, and because we've seen some games where the Lakers are having to deal with teams that have really heavy bigs that wear down his legs, wear down his body over the course of a game. So I think it's a valid request. I don't think it's invalid. The Lakers have been trying to do it recently with Jackson Hayes, basically playing the five, playing sort of that poor man's Vando role. They do it by having Rui play small ball five, but clearly it's very limited. They've got Trey Jameson, which we've talked about here. We've also got the conversation about the conversation about Christian Coloco, but he has health concerns, and they're trying not to use up too much of his too many of his two-way games. So that sort of brings us to this situation where the Lakers probably should be targeting it. If you guys follow anything with Lakers Detailed, we've been advocating that the Lakers go get a heavy big to deal with the heavy bigs that are around the league, because it's not that Anthony Davis can't deal with them. It's a matter of when you have to deal with one type of big to start the game and then have to deal with that heavy big coming off the bench, that can get really difficult. And over the course of 36 minutes, that can wear down. And over the course of the series, that can wear down Anthony Davis too as well. I think those are all valid things. I think his request is valid. It's really about how the Lakers go about doing it. So for this video, I wanted to specifically cover somebody who I think would really help the Lakers in this area if they're going to try and find a guy if we're trying to find somebody who can help the Lakers in more than just one specific thing, right? Like, you can get any heavy big anywhere. That doesn't necessarily mean that big ends up helping you. When Anthony Davis said that, I reflected on a lot of different things. I reflected on um, the type of bigs that have given us trouble this year, which are those heavy bigs that I've mentioned. Guys like Zach Edey, guys like Steven Adams, um, guys like, I'm trying to think who else has super heavy picks. Obviously, Nikola Jokic is going to be there. Ivica Zubac is another guy that's there that gives the Lakers trouble too as well. So those kind of bigs typically give the Lakers a lot of trouble, give Anthony Davis a lot of trouble. So you need somebody who's heavy, a guy who's willing to wrestle. The Lakers have experimented with putting Rui Hachimura in those situations to guard those guys. It hasn't worked well because Rui has to practically face box out those guys, and that ends up being a huge problem. Um, so when we think about the type of big that the Lakers need, but also somebody who doesn't have just like a specialist, right? The big can't be a specialist because then that kind of defeats the purpose of adding a guy next to Anthony Davis. It has to be somebody that can play with Anthony Davis. It has to be somebody who can be useful even when Anthony Davis is not on the floor. So like if he's paired with like LeBron or Austin Reeves, can be helpful in that manner. And it has to be somebody who is comfortable in their own skin, essentially somebody who has an IQ, understands how to float on the floor. And so this video is going to be about Nikola Vucevic. And yes, I know that in order for the Lakers to get somebody like Nikola Vucevic, it's going to require us trading. I think right now the rumor might be that the Lakers are trying to get away with trading Gabe and Vando and JHS, but chances are Rui Hachimura might have to be involved in making that trade possible. It'll depend. We'll see what happens and what the market looks like. But I think what we're learning about this team is that um, having a guy that can sort of do that grunt work, be a single person box out guy, be a person who can space the floor, be a person who can just kind of clog up the paint and make it easier for Anthony Davis and the rest of the team is really, really crucial. And the reason why I want to talk about Vucevic is because I think the Lakers are about to hit an inflection point. And I want to shout out the folks, Darius and Pete, because I think somebody sent it to me that, they in the chat that they had discussed this thing with Vando. Like when Vando comes back, what does Vando look like? Because the Lakers are actually going to run into a situation right now where the same way we had too many guards to start the season, we had to consolidate so we could get like Dalton connect minutes and that sort of thing, and Max and Austin the requisite minutes to see them grow. We're about to, if Vando is 75%, 80% closer to what we expect him to be or better. I think the Lakers are going to run into a situation where they have too many wings. You're going to have Braun, you're going to have AD now. Technically, if he wants to play the four, you'll have Rui, you'll have DFS, and then you'll have Dalton, Max, depending on how you want to deploy them. So now you're going to have too many wings. You're going to have too many guys that sort of need minutes to justify their usefulness, and then you'll have a guy. Even if you take Braun sort of out of the equation because he can basically play point guard, um, and you go with DFS, Rui, and Vando, now you run into a situation where you might not be able to distribute minutes, especially if Vando is back to what he normally is. And so that's sort of the way I've thought about how, when I think about logically, how I would approach finding a big that helps the Lakers. Before I get into the tape, and I'm going to pull up some tape. We're going to watch it together, like we did before. But when we think about it, the functional fit has to make a lot of sense. But at the same time, it has to be somebody who has versatility across lineups. Those are very, very core important things for this Lakers team, because there are deficits with some of these lineups that we have. When Braun is on the floor and AD is not on the floor, sometimes the offense gets really difficult. We don't generate shots in the paint. Sometimes Braun doesn't feel like going to the rim, so we get Gabe Vincent isolations, which is not something that we want. So when we think about those sort of things, a guy to help AD out with rebounding and adding size to the floor while also spacing the floor, a guy who can play next to LeBron when AD is off the floor and the Lakers don't lose like huge rebounding margins, a guy who you can play trust on offense to be able to handle some offensive volume when AD isn't on the floor, but then also you can place him next to defensive guys like DFS and Vando and Max and still have the spacing that's required. And I think if we had to think about it from the perspective of if we had to think about it from the perspective of how we've seen effective players be for the Lakers, you can sort of see Nikola Vucevic be a guy who is very similar to Marc Gasol but obviously in much better shape physically. But in terms of just kind of the offensive threat, he was obviously Nikola is very, very skilled. And so Mark was sort of at the tail end of his career. They really brought him on just to be a big body, move the ball, make high IQ plays. And I think Vucevic falls right into that mold. And I know there's been this thing about his age, like him being 34 and not being like a super athlete. That's a cause of concern. So when we think about guys like Walker Kessler, or we think about guys like Jonas Valanciunas, or even Day'Ron Sharpe, there's this whole thing about age and athleticism. And I honestly don't know. I think those things are all important. But I think for this team specifically, this iteration of this team, considering that the only three guys that we have that are like sort of true scorers are Austin, Braun, and AD, I think it's necessary for the Lakers to try and find somebody who raises their offensive floor a little bit more and raises their defensive rebounding floor more. I don't think the guy that they get at that 5 spot has to be a guy who's like a, lockdown rim protector, because I think the team in general can be a much better defensive team. But I think I think a lot of that has to do with Vando coming back. I think a lot of that potentially Vando coming back and what he looks like, and also just AD playing the 4, being able to be sort of that human eraser that he is when he plays that 4 spot, and his job is just to be the weak side guy. So that's why I'm sort of zoomed in on Nikola Vucevic. And as I was saying, I want to give credit to Pete and Darius, because I think they had on the Laker Film Room pod, because I think they had a conversation about this Vando coming back and how that might affect the trade deadline decision that the Lakers make when they target a specific big. So When it comes to the age thing with Vucevic, like we should just get into the things that are the detractors with him just from the start. Like he's not an athlete. He's not going to be above the rim blocking shots. That's not his way of doing things. He does use his hands the same way Marc Gasol uses his hands to make plays. He is a big body, so he'll put himself in between the ball and the rim. But it's going to be his body and his hands. It's not going to be him. Meeting guys at the summit or anything like that. He's not a risk taker in that regards, meaning that if somebody's driving on Austin Reeves and Vucevic's in the area, unless he's close by, he's not going to go out of his way to try and block that shot unless he sees his teammate get completely overwhelmed or get completely beat because he is very, very, very intent on making sure he boxes out his assignment. It's a core thing. It's a behavioral thing. It's why he's a double-double machine and why he's continuing to make money and be successful in his career. But I think the part that folks should that underestimate as it relates to Vucevic is he's incredibly skilled offensively. He has soft hands and he has really great hands too as well. Anything that he's not able to do off the strength of him just being bigger than the person that he's boxing out or that's defending him, he's able to use counters with like hook shots, fadeaway, short range, fadeaway pull-up jumpers. We're going to watch some tape on him taking threes in transition. He's a great screener. He's actually an excellent finisher off the roll with one hand, meaning like he doesn't have to be spoon-fed the ball. Like you can give him the ball out at the free throw line and he can get to the rim. He has great feet offensively when it comes to that too as well. He's not necessarily a plotter. So when we think of guys like Jonas Valanciunas, that's somebody that's like a true plotter, like a guy when he's running up the floor, it almost kind of looks like it's very laborious for him. But Vooch is not like that. Vooch is a guy who has good rhythm to the way that he runs up and down the floor. And I think he's got great skill and great IQ. And I think he can help not only unlock this Lakers offense in a certain way, he can really reduce the offensive burden depending on how JJ deploys him and what lineups JJ deploys him in. So let's take a look at some of the tape that we have, some of the tape that I pulled. And it's going to be different stuff. It's going to be his shooting, his post-up stuff, and his single-man box out. These are the specific roles that we need out of Vooch, right? So let's take a look at some of the stuff that we can get out of him here. So when we take a look at Vooch's ability to score the basketball, there's the first thing that steps out is his shooting. So he's a great shooter. Shoots like 40%, close to 40% from three. And a lot of the stuff, as you see here, like and so what I did for this exercise, and this is something that I like doing because it's more relevant to what we do, is I try to pull tape against Western Conference teams because that's who we're going to play. So it doesn't make sense for us to watch tape on how he does against the Brooklyn Nets or the Charlotte Hornets because that's not really going to do anything. But for this specific example, I did include some clips from the Celtics because the Celtics play they like to switch and sometimes they play drop too as well. So like again, this is a very nice example of how the Celtics defend Vooch in this situation and how he punishes a guy like Kristaps Porzingis. Again, you see early transition offense, Vooch acutely understands, like this is an IQ thing. Like he acutely understands where the center is, where the ball is going. And you have to remember, Chicago runs outside of Zach LaVine. Chicago runs Zach Giddey at point, and so he's not really an offensive threat. Teams don't really look at him for shooting. And so again, even in transition, Vooch is a guy that can come and punish teams who run back in transition because they're worried about LeBron getting to the rim or they're worried about AD getting to the rim. Perfect example here. You see Giddey go too early, but he does command the double team. You're going to watch Tatum rotate here. And again, Vooch is a guy that can punish you. If you think about it, these are the kinds of plays. A lot of these plays are plays that you'll see, are plays that you see Rui Hachimura get put in. So if you're going to get a guy like Vooch, you're basically going to replace Rui Hachimura with him in the starting lineup and essentially ask him to take the same role that Rui takes, which is box out, rebound, and knock down open threes when they come your way. So you see just another example of more transition threes that he hits. This is kind of what the Lakers try to get out of Marc Gasol too as well. With Mo Bamba, that was an idea that they had, but it's just those guys were very not at different points in their career. So now what does it look like when Vooch has to do single man box outs? So obviously his 3-point shooting is really great. And in transition, it's also really great to see. He also can do that out of peak and pick and pop, that sort of thing. So I don't need to show you guys a bunch of tape highlights of Vooch doing stuff like that. But how does he deal with teams that try to have single man box outs? So one of the things that's unique to Chicago is Chicago actually doesn't send a lot of bodies to go to the defensive glass at times because they have a lot of guards that like to run out in transition. So Vooch is already programmed to be the guy that goes and gets the rebounds. Like that's essentially how they use him. And you'll always see him outlet to guards and stuff like that out there. So you see a single man box out against Mo Wagner. That's a nice example of him sticking to his responsibilities, not getting lost, looking around and trying to help. And this is a nice one because I always like to highlight the wrestling. Wrestling is a huge part of being a big man. And you'll see him battle with Daniel Gafford here. And you see a nice example of what this is, what I was talking about. He has great hands. So if he can't get to the ball, he's going to use his hands, and he's gonna tip shots. He's gonna try and block shots, and he almost turns. He'll create possessions like this for himself to box out. Here's another example here. This is him in drop coverage against it was Randall. This is a Randall Gobert pick and roll. You see how he always keeps his arm on Rudy Gobert? Like this, again, this is just great discipline. He's not allowing Rudy to get behind him to get the alley-oop, if that's what Randall's going to go for. Gives Patrick Williams a chance to contest Randall. And after he contests Randall, he's almost never disengages. He's engaged with Rudy all the way through. But again, because he has great hands, he's able to grab it with one hand. No issues, even when Rudy's trying to attack that rebound. So stuff like that is crucial because you're seeing situations where Vucevic is being asked to do things without anybody else helping him. And as the Lakers work through their their miscommunication, that sort of thing, their goal is like a lot of times he might be left alone, meaning like he might have to box out a guy by himself, or he may be forced to fend for himself in certain situations. So when you have a guy who's spent his entire career doing that, knocking down transition threes, screening for the early ball handler, and pick and popping or diving to the rim, that's super important. But the shooting is always going to be like the very casual NBA fan is always going to tell you, oh, Vooch can shoot X amount of threes and that sort of thing. But when we care on the detailer side, we care about stuff like boxing out and whatnot. And the other thing that we also care about a lot is punishing mismatches. Many teams in the NBA love to do stuff like this. And you can see an example here. Dallas runs just basically a switching defense. They've done this against the Lakers too as well. They basically challenged the Lakers to be able to play five guys that can be effective in hurting them versus versus whatever five that they have because they trust their five. And Vooch is a guy that can punish mismatches. He's not a guy who's just going to go and stand in the corner. If he comes down the floor and he sees that he has a size disadvantage, he has the IQ to go there and find that matchup to attack that matchup. And he can punish small guys, and then at the same time, he can also function. This is like going to be Alonzo Vucevic. This is actually a very recent game. This is going to be Alonzo Vucevic pick and roll action that's going to go on here. Just look at the setup that we have here. Like if you think about how this is all kind of set up, you look at Patrick Williams, you could imagine Anthony Davis there in that position too as well. Vucevic can make that entry pass to Anthony Davis. You look at a guy like Levine, that could be Max Christie. You see the guy on the opposite side, that could be Austin Reeves. It could be Lonzo Ball, could be LeBron James in this situation, or it could be Austin Reeves in this situation. But look at how easy he makes it. Sets a nice like rub screen here, and Chris Dunn's really good at navigating these sort of things. But he sets a nice rub screen here. Mo Bamba has to commit, and Vucevic, and this is great defense. Remember, the Clippers are some of the best defensive teams, and these are the best defensive teams one of the best defensive teams in the NBA. And Mo Bamba hedges, and he does a really nice job stopping it. But again, Vooch, great pass by Lonzo, great hands by Vooch, and he goes right into this floater here. Like he doesn't have to overdo it. How many times have we watched and seen Anthony Davis try to take a layup against this kind of defense and end up maybe missing the layup and falling out of bounds? Vooch's skill sort of trumps a lot of the lack of athleticism that he has. I know the age thing is a concern. I'm not concerned about that much just because he's such an effective player. But things like these sort of small skill complements that you get out of Vooch is really, really important. So again, this Taylor Horton Tucker, everybody knows that Taylor's not a good shooter. Like he's not going to shoot the ball. But Vooch delivers a great screen, and because he delivers a great screen, Jonas has to commit to Taylor. So now Malcolm Brogdon's recovering. Taylor holds the ball a beat too long. Vooch goes directly into his post up here. Now you have just a straight ISO of Vooch against Jonas, and Vooch is very aware that Jonas is not as fast as he is. And what does he do? He goes right to his open spot. He goes right into an open area, and this kind of stuff is super important. Having a guy who can give you this kind of offensive attacking is very helpful. And if you guys remember when we did the Lakers detailed, the very last one that we did, we ended up, Raj and I sort of discussed like the two things that the Lakers have to really consider. And one was that LeBron might be a wild card depending on how much offense you get out of him, how much defense you get out of him, that sort of thing. You never know what you might get out of him. But with Anthony Davis, the core thing is you don't know what sort of offense you're going to get out of him. And if Austin and LeBron are our only two guys who get kind of their feet in the paint, then when they're not on and Anthony Davis isn't making shots at the rim, the Lakers are in trouble. You sort of saw that with the Celtics game, the Celtics win, the win against the Celtics last night. That ends up being a thing. Like when Anthony Davis starts the third quarter off and he's not scoring points, that like he's missing floaters, that can hurt the Lakers. That allows the opposing team to sort of catch up. And I think Vooch helps for those sort of situations because he's just more skilled offensively, I would say, when it comes to it. But overall, obviously, Anthony Davis is a better player. Again, just running basic high pick and roll. Remember, this is a good defensive team. I know Minnesota has not been good record-wise this year, but this is a very disciplined rebounding team that you have here. Vooch gets Gobert to pump fake. All he needs to see from Gobert is for Gobert to lose his containment position here because he's worried about the three, and he just drives right by him. Makes this beautiful move, and it sets up the turnaround hook. So these sort of plays are the sort of plays that if we add a guy like Vucevic, I think would be super helpful for the Lakers. It is something that I think the Lakers sort of lack. It's an area that the Lakers sort of lack right now. And if you think about it functionally, it allows the Lakers to be able to, if you're replacing Rui in the starting lineup, right? If you're replacing Rui in the starting lineup, it you get an idea of how he can help the Lakers out. Now you don't have to have Anthony Davis be the guy that is always screening, right? And those possessions where you just need Rui to knock down open threes, um, or you need somebody else to screen with LeBron James. All of those sort of things, sort of direction the Lakers go in when they go that way. The reason I would rather like Vooch, even though the cost is a little bit higher compared to a guy like Jonas Valanciunas, and definitely over Walker Kessler, because I don't like the idea of giving up 2 first-round picks for a guy who's might be situational in the playoffs, is because I think Vooch helps in other areas that those other guys don't. I think teams that are already bent on taking a game, I don't think Walker Kessler is going to be helpful against those teams. So then you need to see value out of him in terms of him being an offensive threat or being able to funnel guys to him. If you can't funnel guys to him, then it just kind of makes it sort of a moot thing. So we need more than just rim protection when it comes to that position in itself. And I think functionally, if you're going to basically move Anthony Davis to the 4, then you might as well get a skilled scorer at that 5, even if he isn't a crazy rim protector, because that's a huge lineup. The front court of LeBron, Anthony Davis, and Vucevic is really, really big. you're basically having two 7-footers, and one of them is a great scorer inside the post, in pick and roll, cat, all that sort of thing. So I'll be very curious to see what the Lakers are going to, what direction the Lakers go in, and how effective, how seriously they take it. I do agree with the LFR guys that I think Vando's return and what he looks like is going to heavily influence how aggressively they go after a guy like Vucevic. And they may not go after him at all. But if I had to choose between all of them, as a guy who might help us kind of get over the hump and be a guy that can help us specifically address the things that have hurt us, against like the teams that are in front of us in the Western Conference, I think Vucevic can certainly help. And yeah, I'll be very curious to see what the Lakers do. So as always, I appreciate all the folks and watching this video. If you haven't subscribed, feel free to subscribe. We definitely appreciate it. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. We're almost there. I think we're only about 200 away. So if you can, please like the video, subscribe if you haven't already, and just stay tuned in. We'll always have more post games. We'll have more videos, and I hope the breakdown, you guys appreciate the breakdown, because I definitely appreciate it, and enjoyed doing it. So as always, depending on whenever you're watching this tonight, or at night or during the day, I hope you have a wonderful day. And if nothing else, I'll see you in the next one. Take it easy.